All right, let's get this up and running. Hey, Steve, it's good to see you, my man. I'm just getting myself situated here, get my windows arranged. Let's see, that should be good. That should be good. Let's see, let's just check our volume here real quick to make sure everything's, let's see. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Get that taken care of there. Okay, cool. So, yeah, we're rebuilding the Spelljammer Combat and Exploration document that we published on the DMsGuild. For people that want to read along in the manual as we rebuild it. The actual, let's see, the actual document is Spelljammer Combat and Exploration right here, which is on the DMsGuild. It has a full-size preview that you will be able to read along with us today. You can scroll down here to the combat chapter and click, and that'll take you to combat, or if you want to at any point, you can click on the ballista picture, and that will also take you to the combat chapter. So this is where we're going to begin on page 13 today. We're updating. We built this last year, so now that 2024 rules have been updated, we're combing through this book to make sure that all the language in here is still relevant for how the 5e24 mechanics work, because we're building subclasses for Spelljammer using the 5e24 mechanics as well. And then we're also working on a Spelljammer mecha and kaiju book, where the idea of these different ships that we have in Spelljammer, including the fighter craft, are able to fight colossal-sized creatures like this, a massive worm. So you need a 100-foot ship. So these are the kind of combats and stuff we want to have, like very reminiscent to Star Wars Empire Strikes Back, for those that know. But it works basically from anything that's more than 25, like basically 50 feet scale, up to a world turtle being 10,000 miles in size with the world on its back, for instance. So we can operate at that scale as well and be able to express creatures, structures, machines in the 5e game engine terms at any scale. So we just want to go through the book, make sure it's compliant with 2024 language. So if you think this kind of stuff is cool, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon for notifications when we're live in the future. And the document that we're going to be working in today here is the subclass book that we are going to be publishing, the 13 subclasses, or rather the 13 classes. We each have their own subclass. We're going through these on Tuesdays and Fridays, including tomorrow. And then in the evenings like this on Monday and Thursday, we do deeper dive mechanics because we have more time to play. So we're playing. Let me kick this document out of the way because we already have it open here at the bottom of the document on page 18. See, at the end of all the subclass options, we get to the book revisions. And my intent is to stream here for a couple hours, just to see if we find a natural breakpoint in there somewhere. And then off screen, I'll be taking this change log from last week and integrating it into the current document, so then we can follow up. And when we finish our change log for today, we can then go through and backfeed that. So on Thursday, when we'll be back on stream again, continuing with either the rest of the combat chapter or maybe into the spellcasting chapter, we'll have everything updated. So by the time we get done with this video series, the following day, if everything goes well, the following day, the book will be ready for us to update and have back up. And of course, the original 2014 version is still available on the DMsGuild. You just purchase an earlier version of it, or rather, you purchase the thing and then you just all the versions that get uploaded with revisions and changes and whatever along the way. All the previous options are still available for you to grab. You just click on older edition and then click the one that was prior to this one, and you'll get the most recent 2014 document. So all the changes that have been happening throughout all the books that I build, I go back and I edit them occasionally. So you can always keep an eye out, buy a book, and then you can keep an eye out for the updates, and you'll be up to speed with wherever the book is at. So I guess I probably rambled on enough, right? So I'm going to just take this window and drop it into its own little block that I can keep an eye on separately. And then drop that away, pull this into a separate window, and then we've got the basic rules for 2024 pulled up here in case we run across something that is going to require referencing, such as like maybe the study action or stuff like that, like some small details that might need addressing. So I'm going to operate inside this PDF, and again, you guys can tag along in the if you don't have your own copy, you can tag along in the full-size free preview. Again, that's here. And okay, that's our cue to get started. So cool, let's get started. Let's see, we're gonna drop down to we're gonna drop down to the combat chapter, and we're just basically doing a page turner. We're gonna walk through what the book says, and if anything strikes me as needing consideration, thank you. There's like this little line that pops up on occasion down here. I don't know if I need to like maybe have some trim in the future for like having like maybe 1 millimeter over, so I don't have to worry about that white mark effect. This is the first document I've noticed that in though, but it does appear here, so I think that's also something I might be able to adjust. So okay, great. So combat, yeah, we're just gonna basically go through the book page by page. Not only will you guys get an idea of how this system works, and you can then use this as a reference point to go back and say, hey, you know, if you want to join my Discord server, you can say, hey, back on like minute 15, you were talking about scaling movement and blah, blah, blah. We can get into a conversation about that to clarify the points if necessary, which can always become an opportunity for me to improve the language in the document as a whole. This is a living thing. I never assume I have it right. I always work in PDFs because it's easy to edit and change PDFs as needed. When we understand the system better, we might have a new opinion about how things need to operate. We come up with a better way of doing it. And we take positive feedback from the community for ways that we can change and make the document better, and we execute it. So like the biggest thing we saw changes in 24 from 14 is that you get more healing per spell point spent, or spell level depending on how you work, but generally you get more healing out of spells expended. So I wanted to reflect that in the repair mechanics for the ships. When using spells to repair your ship, I wanted to have a similar increase in efficiency for repairing the ship, because that is the one sticking point in the system, is that the ships don't have a lot of hit points, so that your team has to sacrifice their own hit points, but recovering those hit points for the ship currently is pretty difficult. So making it easier to recover those points will give you the opportunity to either narrate that you're having your ship repaired and docked, or if necessary, you'll have the spell power to actually be able to heal up the ship efficiently, depending on the scale, you know, the tier of play that your characters are in. So without further ado, Spelljammer Combat Exploration provides rules that add options for characters to command spelljamming ships at map scales larger than 5-foot squares, typical of most adventures during a round of combat. As detailed in Spelljamming Ships section above, spelljamming ships can move up to 100 million miles per day, similar to how a 30-foot movement speed during a round of combat scales to 3 miles per hour during overland travel. Spelljammer ships can also scale distance over time from 1 day of travel to movement during a round of combat. Below is a list of approximate distances over time that simplifies movement during Spelljammer Combat and Exploration. TM. Travel duration, and then the maximum distance. There's the major helms, which are rare magic items, 4,000 gold in value. And the minor helms, which are uncommon items. The minor helms can move ships up to 50 feet in size, which are referred to as craft, and operate. Your characters operate at the 5-foot scale on them, and can perform both melee and ranged combat at the 50-foot scale, and can further progress to greater scales up to 1 million miles per day. So minor helms can go up to 1 million miles per day, and major helms, which are for vessels that operate at the 50-foot scale, that can scale up to 500 feet in size. A fighter craft can use a major helm. A vessel cannot use a minor helm. So for you to move big boat, you need to buy big helm. If you want to move small ship, you can buy small helm. So scaling costs effectively 400 gold for a minor, 4,000 gold for a major helm, uncommon versus common magic items, which means you can get fightercraft into the hands of your characters incredibly early in their career and stay balanced in the game system. Hey Adam, how you doing? Right on, man. Well, yeah, again, anyone that wants to tag along, the document is linked down below here in the description. We're going through the process. Here you go, Spelljammer Combat Exploration. You can read along in the free preview if you want. I am operating out of the actual book, and we are going through the process of updating this for the 2024 rules. So I'm doing a read along, and anytime a sticking point comes up, we'll go into our document and start putting some changelog notes and figure out what the text is that we should change it to, if anything. We found a couple nagging details so far, so it's going to be worth the effort. So we're looking at travel duration, major helms versus minor helms. So over the course of a day, a major helm can go 100 million miles, as listed in the Spelljammer Adventures in Space. But the minor helms can do only 1 million miles per day. So 1 day, 24 hours-ish. And if you want to do roughly, and again, it doesn't say exactly, it says approximate distances over time. So we're simplifying movement during Spelljammer Combat and Exploration. So a day is 100 million miles, so roughly 2 hours is 10 million miles. So that means that roughly 5 million miles per hour. That means in 10 minutes you can go 1 million miles, which is the distance that a minor helm can go in a day. And then you have 1 minute, you can go 100,000 miles. And then so from 1 day, 100 million miles, each round, 10,000 miles. Similarly, the minor helm can scale from 1 million miles per day down to up to 100 miles per round. So while the exploration chapter below details distances traveled during a day, combat movement determines the distance traveled during a 6-second round. The maximum movement speed during a round of combat for a ship with a major spelljamming helm is 10,000 miles, which is depicted during combat as 10 squares on a 1,000-mile square map. Similarly, the maximum movement speed during a round of combat for a ship with a minor spelljamming helm is 100 miles, which is depicted during combat as 10 squares on a 100-mile map. That should read 10 miles. Oh, yeah, we found a typo. How about that? This is page 13. I can't believe we found that. Scale should be minor helm scale of round is max 10 miles. Oh yeah, it says this 10 squares on a 10-mile square map. Ugh. That's an embarrassing error. There we go. On a 10-mile square map. As detailed in the ship squares each round, similar to walking 25 feet at the 5-foot scale. And you can use your action to move another 5 squares, similar to taking the dash action, for a total of 10 squares each round. While 10,000 miles per round is the maximum speed a ship can travel, they are capable of any slower speed and hovering in place. The distance moved is determined by the size of the square on the map, also referred to as scale. Scaling movement. In combat, the map's scale can range in size from 1,000 mile to 5-foot squares, shifting magnitude by a factor of 10 at each scale in between as listed here. So 1,000 miles, 100 miles, 10 miles, 1 mile, which is approximately 5,000 feet. It's 5,270. So it's roughly 5,000 feet. So rounding down to 500 feet, 50 feet, and then 5 foot. A ship can safely increase or decrease scale by 1 magnitude during movement. If a pilot uses their action to move again, You can also choose to increase or decrease magnitude scale by 1 magnitude again. So 5 feet, if you take the dash action, can scale up to the 500-foot scale. If you want to take the next round, dash action again, you can get up to the 10-mile scale. Dash action again gets you up to maximum speed, which is full flight speed per day. So that'd be what, 1 round, 2 round, 1 round, 2 round, 3. Yeah, so in 3 rounds you can go from standstill to maximum warp speed. A ship can, except for the and a fighter craft can get to maximum 1 million miles per day speed in 2 rounds. 1 round, 2 round, and then you're done. The vessels with the major helm take an additional round. There you go. However, attempting to shift scale by more than 1 magnitude during a move action risks inertia shock. Make a Constitution saving throw against DC 20 plus 1 for each scale of magnitude shifted as listed above. If your cargo or towing weight reduces the number of squares your ship can move, roll with disadvantage. So we had up above in the equipment section looking at the weight that you can move, and basically since you can move 5 squares in a movement, 20% over capacity slows your ship by 20%. So if I can normally haul 100 tons of cargo, if I was at 120, instead of moving 5 squares, I would move at 4 squares. So the inertia shock system here, attempting to shift scale by more than 1 magnitude risks inertia shock. If the save fails, the spelljamming helm is disabled. You lose focus and are stunned until the beginning of your next turn. In addition, the ship is scuttled, as detailed in the scuttling section below, which we looked at last session. Scuttling is when your ship careens, crashes, or slams into something, or in this case has an inertia shock from moving too quickly or slowing down too fast. It just throws everything around inside the ship. And this getting thrown around is effectively falling damage. So if you shock your ship, or like if a hammer ship comes up and like just basically broadside bludgeons your ship, and effectively it topples or pushes your ship as scuttling, it causes the pilot to make a saving throw, and if the pilot fails the save, everyone on the aboard the ship takes falling damage. Inside the number of D6s equals the number of 50-foot squares. So a fighter craft, which occupies at most 1 square, if you scuttle a fighter craft, the pilot will take D6 points of damage. But if you scuttle a hammerhead ship, which is 250 feet long, everyone on board is going to take 5d6 falling damage. So getting your massive scale ship scuttled is devastating. But it's also really difficult to scuttle massive ships. The larger ships have advantage against that save, and smaller ships have disadvantage. So the likelihood of you getting scuttled is decreased the larger your ship is. So, for example, if you shift scale while moving from 5-foot scale to 1,000 miles, or the opposite, from full speed to stop on a dime, the DC to resist inertia shock is 26. That's basically like slamming 1,000 G in 1 round, and your inertia shock is going to be a DC 26 Constitution saving throw, or you basically stun yourself, and the whole ship basically just flips over, flips like Starsky and Hutch. So that's the idea there. Ship combat maps. So now we established our scale and movement. Let's look at ship combat maps. While a vessel can move thousands of miles per round, weapons and spells are far more limited in range. Combat can generally be conducted on 3 different map scales using Spelljammer Combat and Exploration variant rules. The 500-foot scale is a ship occupies 1 square on a map of this scale, or any scale larger than 500 feet. Because once you can occupy 1 square, it doesn't matter how large that square is, you're still just occupying 1 square. And since a lot of the vessels are larger than 50 feet, but no larger than 500 feet, it fits in a 500-foot square. And similarly, a fighter craft that's only, say, like 40 feet in size still fits inside of a single 500-foot square. So 50-foot scale, a vessel occupies a number of squares equal to its listed space on maps of this scale. a craft occupies 1 square on maps of this scale, like the Hammerhead ship we were talking about being 250 feet long. It occupies a 5 by 5 space at the 50-foot scale. So 5 squares. While the fighter craft still sits inside of a 50-foot square, so it looks disproportionate, but if you had a pixie in a dungeon that's only 2 feet tall next to your Goliath, which is 8 feet tall, but still size medium, they're both going to occupy 1 square, but the Goliath is going to occupy a much larger space than the pixie does, but it looks the same at the 5-foot scale. Similar idea here. And then 5-foot scale ship, so at the 500-foot scale, a ship occupies 1 square on maps of this scale or any scale larger than 500 feet. A vessel occupies a number of squares equal to its listed space on maps of this scale, and a fighter craft occupies 1 square on maps of this scale, the 50-foot scale. And at the 5-foot scale, a ship occupies a number of squares equal to its listed size divided by 5 on maps of this scale. A ship occupies a number of squares equal to its listed size divided by 5 on a map of this scale. So this would be a Hammerhead ship is 250 feet. So divide by 5, it occupies 50 5-foot squares. And the tokens that are included with the book, they were built at the 50-foot scale. And Roll20, Owlbear Rodeo, or anywhere else, you can actually grab the token art that's included with this, and then just pull and scale it up to the 50-foot scale, or rather to the 5-foot scale. It still looks fine. It's perfectly serviceable as a map. It gets a little blurry around the edges, but it services really well. It's only the top decks. I didn't render all the lower decks. Those are also provided by Wizards of the Coast if you get Spelljammer's Adventures in Space. In the PDF, rather online, it gives you digital pictures of all the lower decks that you can just rotate 90 degrees and line up with this for your proper scaling on board ships. And that'll work just perfectly fine. So it works well. Map scales and weapon ranges. So different weapons and different types of weapons can be used to make attacks at different scales of distance, though weapons generally can't attack targets more than 1 mile away. For additional details, see weapons and crew section below, which we'll get to. 500-foot scale. At the 500-foot scale, you can attack with ranged weapons. The exact locations of creatures aboard ships are generally not depicted on maps of this scale. The DM can describe their location as needed or place them on a 50 or 5-foot scale map if preferred. 50-foot scale map. At the 50-foot scale, ranged weapons can be used to make attacks as well as ship melee weapons within reach of the target, as detailed in the weapons and crew section below. The exact location of creatures aboard ships are generally not depicted on maps of this scale. The DM can describe the location as needed or place creatures on a 5-foot scale map. 5-foot scale. This is the typical scale of combat in Dungeons & Dragons. Any type of weapon can be used to attack targets within range. The exact location of creatures are generally depicted on maps of this scale, occupying a number of squares as determined by their listed size. You can close distance to attack targets within melee range and board other ships, or open distance to remain out of reach of enemies, attempting the same by shifting the scale of map in combat during movement as detailed below. So depicting scale during combat. Shifting between map scales during combat can be visualized by placing each scale on a separate map. The illustration below depicts a 34-inch by 48-inch battle map commonly used while playing in person. I'm referring to Chessex here without using their name, but the Chessex map, the 34 by 48-inch vellum rollout map, it's 34 by 48 inches. I've got 2 of them. The illustration below depicts a 34 by 48 inch battle map commonly used while playing in person, while virtual tabletops like Roll20 can accommodate grids with significantly more squares. I typically have grid squares of 80 by 80 or sometimes 100 by 100. I know that really low-end CPUs kind of choke on anything larger than 50 by 50. Here I am, hi. Choke on anything larger than 50 by 50, so I've been trying to constrain my sizes to those smaller scales. But again, this only requires this is 35 by this hole here is 34 by 48. So obviously a 50 by 50 space could accommodate all of this as well. So continuing. The 3 scales depicted below are 500-foot scale to the left, 50-foot scale in the middle, and 5-foot scale to the right. So 500-foot scale, each of these squares is 500 squares. That's a 10 by 10 space, which is 1 mile. And if you know Light as Araxis, you'll recognize this as the Citadel of Light, which happens to fit inside of a 1 mile space. These are star moths, 200 feet long. These are warbirds, which are 50-foot scale fighter craft. And these are hammerhead ships, which are 250 feet long. You can see here that a number of them can fit inside of this 500-foot space. Each of these squares is 50-foot scale, as indicated here. So 500-foot scale, the illustration above depicts an asteroid base occupying a 1 mile space on a 500-foot scale map. A. A fleet of star moths and warbirds, B, are defending the base from an enemy fleet, C. So here we see B and then C. When two or more ships occupy adjacent 500-foot squares, they can be placed on a 50-foot scale map as depicted in the middle. 50-foot scale. Here are the 2 adjacent. Here's the 2 that are making contact, and here's their adjacent positions. Zoom in. Whop. This would be really fun to actually build a computer program with. But if you can do it, like if I can explain it to you how to do it in MeatSpace, then you can easily do it on a computer. So virtual tabletop, it works great. 50-foot scale. The illustration above depicts some of the defending star moths and warbirds and some of the enemy hammerhead ships occupying adjacent 500-foot squares on a 50-foot scale map, while still present on the 500-foot scale map to the left. So this is still happening over here at the fleet level while combat is engaged. While these 2 are in contact, they're engaged in basically a dogfight at this now 50-foot scale of combat, where they can use ranged and melee weapons against each other, like your characters could in a dungeon. So the illustration above depicts some of the defending star moths and warbirds and blah blah blah. When 2 or more ships occupy the same or adjacent 50-foot squares, such as the warbird ship entering the space of the closest hammerhead ship, depicted here in C. If we zoom in a little bit, you can see a warbird closing and then landing on deck here. They can be placed on a 5-foot square map as depicted to the right. So now we transition to the 5-foot scale, where you can see the warbird parked on the back of the hammerhead ship at the 5-foot scale. The illustrations above depict a warbird boarding party A. That's the warbird boarding party here. These are Light as Araxis elven troops. That's a Light as Araxis elven commander. NPC stat blocks are provided in the LOX adventure. The illustration above depicts the warbird boarding party landing on the deck of a hammerhead ship on a 5-foot scale map. This is the normal scale used during typical combat between characters and monsters, while still present on a 50 and 500 scale map to the left. Because while you're fighting creatures here with your sword and longbow, you're also still engaged in a dogfight with the star moths that launched this warbird at you in the first place, which is still involved in a fleet battle to try to attack the Citadel of Light here at the 500-foot scale. So, and you'll see later when we get into ship rolls, you operate at all 3 of these scales at the same time, dividing your character's action economy between these different things. If you want to have your monk focusing on piloting the ship while you're in this dogfight, so that you can take advantage of his key-like abilities to dodge the fuck out of shit and keep your ship safe, then your berserker can start mowing down elves on the top deck, while the bard commands the squadron or the fleet to maneuver and attack the defending fleet, or to try to get past them, potentially drawing attacks of opportunity to attack the Citadel directly without dealing with the fleet first, so that you can start engaging in dogfights in the city itself if you want to, using the maps that we provided in the adventure that we published. So enjoy. But yeah, that's how the scale works. You can minimize to The normal scale can be used to take the combat between characters and monsters, and also 50 and 500 scale to the left. You can minimize the size of 5-foot scale maps during ship combat by dividing the ship deck plans into 10 by 10 segments, only placing the one in use each round, adding or changing segments as needed. I don't have it listed in the book here, but a 10 by 10 space is often the back of a pizza box. So if you have a pizza delivered to you, like a medium-sized pizza or larger, that's going to typically be larger than 10 inches. So you can just take a ruler and you can divide it up with a marker into a 10 by 10 grid. And then you can take the pizza lid, the inside of the pizza box, and then the bottom of the other pizza box, and you'll have two separate 10 by 10 grids that you can have sit as like two next to each other as a dogfight. And then you can have a larger map showing the 500-foot scale for the larger battle around you. And then you can have a chess-X map for the 5-foot scale so that you can have 3 different scales operating at the same time, if you want to. That's a way you can do it. In virtual tabletop, the environment is large enough that you can literally have all 3 of these things in the same map. Or, if you wanted to, you can have a separate map of each scale. So when you transition from one scale to the other, you would transition from one page in your Roll20 game. You would switch from one map to another map. But I like to have all 3 of the maps on the same page. So if you want to maneuver ships at the 500-foot scale, you just scroll over to the left and then use your action economy to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to use an attack action to issue that squadron to attack, for instance. And then if you're talking about your monk engaged in combat, then we can all just shift our focus to the middle of the Roll20 screen where the actual dogfight is occurring, and maybe the monk uses a flurry of blows to launch a flurry of attacks using the ship's battering ram or whatever. And then we zoom in again to the far right. Now the berserker is just basically mopping the floor with elves using a hammer. So those are the ideas. Yeah, so far so good. We had that one typo that we found, but so far so good. But we're not. These are all basically brand new mechanics that were like these are conceptual mechanics. These ideas work in any role-playing game that uses a grid, and you can use it in I think it's great for Starfinder, obviously, as well as Pathfinder. If you really want to worry about grids in Shadowdark or DCC or Numenera, you certainly could do that as well. But this in Numenera more than anything, because of the mecha that you have in that system, also works great with Lancer. So shifting scale, as detailed above, you can shift the scale of distance while moving during combat. The ship can, and again, if you do it more than one magnitude per movement, you can risk inertia shock. So as detailed above, you can shift the scale of distance while moving during combat. The ship that characters are aboard is simultaneously present at the 550 and 5-foot scale maps. Since weapons can't attack a target more than 1 mile away, 500 feet is the largest scale necessary during combat. And the only reason this is limited to 1 mile is because we're using siege weapons. We're using medieval style catapults and ballistas and trebuchet and spell casting, and it takes time. The joke I keep making is that you can literally see it a mile away. Someone launches a rock at you, and if you aren't surprised, you are watching it heading this way. Since the ships have hover capability, I mean, you can just basically sidestep the stone, just like in Lord of the Rings. When they during the last battle, when they flung that massive piece of battlement to crush the orc general, he saw it coming in and he just like sidestepped and spat on it when it landed next to him. It's the same sort of thing. It's being launched so far away that you have plenty of time to calculate where it's going to land and just sidestep it. It can't hit you. If you're surprised, you don't see it coming, the attack is at disadvantage, and yeah, you can attack beyond a mile. But if you are fighting an aware opponent, you cannot realistically hit them if they're more than a mile away. So that also helps reinforce setting a magnitude scale that we don't have to worry about larger than the 500-foot square, because 10 500-foot squares is a mile. So your arena in ship combat is generally going to be limited to a 10 by 10 grid, which is very small and manageable. And since your ship only occupies 1 square, you can basically maneuver around it. We'll look at maneuvering around things in the future, but basically everything can operate on a 10 by 10 square. And so just have a couple sessions and a bunch of pizzas, and you'll eventually have a whole bunch of 10 by 10 square boxes that you can use. Like my ship is going to be on this box. This is our crew box. You could even like directly draw the ship onto that box if you wanted to, or just like, you know, staple a printed map of your ship if you wanted to. But that could become like, that's your pizza box, and then things try to come into proximity. I'm getting ahead of myself. Since weapons can't attack a target more than 1 mile away, 500 feet is the largest scale necessary during combat. And while targets remain within range, they can be placed on the 500-foot scale with your ship and any significant objects relevant to the encounter. Hey, that's what I was talking about. If there are no targets less than 500 feet away, the 50-foot scale map can be ignored until a target is close enough to be placed on this map. Similarly, the 5-foot scale map isn't necessary until a target is close enough to your ship to use it. So for example, if a 50-foot scale map is placed on a 10 by 10 grid, your ship and target must be within 500 feet to occupy the space on this map together. The illustration below depicts how combat shifts from one map to another as you close or open distance with a target during movement. And here's our map depicting the 50-foot scale. 500-foot scale. At the 500-foot scale, generally all ships and flying creatures not aboard ships themselves can be placed on this map. When a ship moves to a square adjacent to a target at the 500-foot scale, as depicted below, you can shift scale by placing them on a 50-foot scale map, as depicted to the right, at a location at least 50 feet from the target that the ship can occupy. You can then use any remaining movement. This is telling you that, like, when you're actually moving in scale on a map and you're now touching another ship that's adjacent to you, you can now zoom into this smaller scale and further show the ships interacting with each other. If a ship increases scale to move away from the battle, remove it from the map unless you choose to pursue it, because once you move out of the 500-foot scale, you're too far away to effectively attack each other, because you can't attack things more than a mile away. So moving out of that 1 mile scale is basically running away from a fight, and until the enemy can catch up to you using the pursuit mechanics that we use, you're basically not on the map. There's no reason for you to be on a map. There's nothing to fight. So at the 50-foot scale, when a ship moves to a square adjacent to a target at the 50-foot scale as depicted below, you can shift scale by placing them on a 5-foot scale map as depicted to the right, at least 5 feet from the target that the ship can occupy. So you have to be at least 5 feet away. So there we go, 5 feet. The ship can occupy. You can then use any remaining movement. So you can get within 5 feet. Like here, we can get within 50 feet of each other, and then I could continue to overlap to ram or board your ship, as we see over here, 5 feet, and then moving the extra feet to be able to actually get on deck. If a ship increases scale to move away from targets on the map, remove it from the 50-foot scale, and then shift back to the 500-foot scale map. You can then use any remaining movement. So if these ship part distance here, and I move far enough away to be off of this map, like 1 square and then 2 squares, I would officially 4 squares, I would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares. So in one movement, I could move this star moth off of this 50-foot scale and then zoom out to now this 500-foot scale. But I used 5 squares of movement to do it. So now I would have to use the dash action to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares away to over here. And then the following round, if this hammerhead ship doesn't pursue, I'll drop off this map altogether because I will now be outside of combat range. When a ship moves to a square within 50 feet of a target at the 5-foot scale, as depicted below, you can see here again. These are 5-foot squares. That's a 50-foot square. That 10 by 10. Here we have a 10 by 10 at the 50-foot scale, and then we've got it's like a 6 by 6 here at the 500-foot scale. When a ship moves to a square within 50 feet of a target, within 50 feet, so you're now in a range closer than 50 feet. When a ship moves to a square within 50 feet of a target at the 5-foot scale as depicted below, you can use any remaining movement and face the ship in any direction while doing so. This is the typical scale used during combat. So again, it doesn't matter what your scale is of movement. You always have 5 squares of movement per action. So the interaction economy is 5 squares, and then the dash action is also 5 squares. So a total of 10 squares. But the idea is that you're moving more slowly to be able to regulate your distance. So like your pilot's you could still be potentially moving 10,000 miles per round, but you're slowly closing in distance at 10,000 miles plus 25 feet this round. So like you're sliding in slowly in range of that ship, and it's that delicate distancing regardless of if everyone's standing still and you really are only moving 25 feet in 6 seconds, or if you're moving 1,000 miles a minute and relative to each other you're only moving 25 feet. The scale and the idea is still the same. That's a very gentle, small, precise movement in comparison to the scale of thousands of miles that you could be operating at. So it's an idea of focusing your attention on your ship movement. If a ship increases scale to move away from the target, remove it obviously from the 5-foot scale and then return to the 50-foot scale. And you can then use any remaining movement there. So if it only takes, like, say 2 squares for me to move off of this grid here, that would leave me with 3 squares of movement left here. So adjacent, like this one steps away, and then 1, 2, 3, I can move my Warhawk to here, for instance. Shifting scale with stationary targets. While traveling through the astral sea and wild space unimpeded is a passive activity similar to handling animals when traveling by wagon. The closer to an object a ship travels, the more the pilot must pay attention to the relative speed of the ship compared to other objects. Otherwise, the ship may hit them as detailed in the colliding objects section below. Oh, we were just talking about that. Sorry. Closing distance. When closing distance with a stationary target, the pilot slows the speed. This is while shifting scale with stationary objects, right? So when closing distance with a stationary object, the pilot slows the speed of the ship during movement by shifting to a smaller scale. For example, when landing on a stationary target, such as a skiff on the asteroid base illustrated to the right, the pilot initially slows to the 500-foot scale while traveling across the base. Here at the 500-foot scale, right, you can see our ship here. As the ship moves closer, the pilot closes again to the 50-foot scale, further slowing down the approach. And here we see the 50-foot scale, buildings. The pilot then reduces speed to the 5-foot scale and ends movement when the craft lands on the surface of the asteroid, reducing its speed to 0 feet. And here we are, actually landed on the deck, or on the in the town square here. The shared courtyard. Sorry, the shared courtyard here where this skiff has landed. 5-foot scale, 50-foot scale, 500. Yes, I know. When I did this map, I was not going to put a detailed roof and like flowers and stuff like that at the 50-foot scale. That there's pathways here and rough building shapes. I think that was sufficient. I didn't really want to break my neck on this, but I think it serves its purpose. The pilot can then increase movement to the and then opening distance. So similar to closing distance with an object, as a pilot moves away from a target, speed increases with scale. For example, this craft launches from a stationary target, such as the asteroid base illustrated to the right. So here is A is landing and here B is taking off. So we're already landed here at point 1. When the pilot lifts the craft off the asteroid, movement is initially at the 5-foot scale. As the ship gains altitude, movement increases to the 50-foot scale, which we have depicted here. And then the pilot then increases movement to the 500-foot scale. Clearing the surrounding structures, the ship can now increase scale unobstructed to exit the gravity plane of the asteroid and travel between worlds, as depicted here in point 3 of B. So you zoom in, you zoom back out again. That's the the painstaking step-by-step process. But once you understand the process, it's like, yeah, I zoom in and I land. I use 2 movements, a dash action, and we're good. So risking inertia shock, bringing this up again, as detailed above, shifting scale during movement by more than 1 magnitude requires a Constitution saving throw equal to 20 plus total magnitude shifted. If the save fails, the ship moves 10 squares in a straight line at the scale of movement prior to failing the inertia shock saving throw. When a ship is opening distance from a larger object, this simply delays taking off since the initial movement is 0, but when a ship is closing distance at the 50-foot or greater scale, failing the inertia shock save can result in the ship crashing instead of landing. For instance, if a pilot attempts to land without crashing at the 500-foot scale, the ship shifts 2 magnitudes, so the inertia shock DC is 22. If the save succeeds, the ship will land safely. If the save fails, the ship drifts up to 1 mile during the pilot's turn, potentially as detailed in colliding object section below. If you're only 500 feet away from landing and you just shocked yourself, you're still moving at the 500-foot scale, you're going to slam into the side. You're basically going to slam land or crash into the courtyard at the 500-foot scale, and depending on what your magnitude of movement is and distance covered, that's going to determine the damage that you take, which we talk about in the collision section below. So there we go. So far, so good. Hope you guys are having fun. I kind of enjoy reading through this. I also kind of enjoy pontificating and rambling about thoughts involved with it. So thanks a lot to anyone that's hanging out and is just kind of checking out the book with me. I'm enjoying the opportunity of reading through it just to be able to hear it again. It's been a while since I've done a read through of it. Every time I do, like above, we caught some typos and opportunities for us to improve the book. So I think it's fun just exploring the ideas to help fuel further concepts for different types of adventures in the future and to make it all current for 2024. So thanks a lot for hanging out with me, guys. Shifting scale with moving targets. So while ships are traveling between worlds, the squares on a map can be at any scale depicted to depict general travel speed. As detailed above, ships must be within 1 mile to make ranged attacks against targets that aren't surprised. When 2 or more ships engage in combat while traveling in the same general direction, the speed both ships are traveled is ignored. In the illustration below, 2 ships are traveling in the same general direction at 100 million miles per day. On a grid of 500-foot squares, the Star Moth A is 1,500 feet behind the Star Galleon B. The mutual speed is ignored, while the ships remain within combat range, able to move and shift scales relative to each other as detailed above. So yeah, 1, 2, 3 squares, we're both moving at high speeds, but since there's absolutely nothing else in space for millions of miles, it's an endless constant void map. Changing scale between moving ships remains the same on maps with 550 and 5-foot squares. For example, in the illustration below, the Star Moth moves 2 squares at the 500-foot scale, A, bop, bop, to a position adjacent to the Space Galleon and closes distance by shifting to the 50-foot scale B. So here we are now at the 50-foot scale, 50 feet apart. The Star Moth then moves another 3 squares, ending movement within 100 feet of the Galleon. That would have been 1, 2, this would have been, here, this is where it would have started because it had entered the square. And you can see it's a 4 squares, so we entered halfway in, halfway out of the square, right? So if we were here, we got what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, that's 10. This is a 10 by 10 square here. And we started the Star Moth halfway in, halfway out of that square. This is our actual range of 50-foot squares. So if I were to back off with my Star Moth out of this dotted line, I could then move back out to the 500-foot scale. Or I could just say, I back out and scale out away from the ship. And you would just change your scale here and then take your 5 squares of movement. Here we go. Changing scale between moves. Oh no, we just did that one. Right. Stationary and moving targets. As detailed above, stationary targets are placed on the 500-foot scale with any ship relevant to the encounter and act as points of reference for ship movement. In the illustration below, an asteroid base is stationary while the defending fleets of star moths and enemy ships are moving targets. While combat is depicted on this 500-foot scale, all ship movement is relative to the stationary base. When the star moths A and hammerhead ships B move to adjacent 500-foot squares, the ships can shift to a 50-foot scale as previously described. For convenience, while ships remaining in separate 500-foot squares, they can also be placed individually in separate 50-foot square grids as depicted on the illustration below. Here's one 10 by 10, here's another 10 by 10. These separate grids can simplify shifting to smaller scales as needed without disrupting large-scale maps. This is the pizza box idea. So for convenience, while ships remain in separate 500-foot squares, they can also be placed individually on separate 50-foot square grids as depicted in the illustration below. This is a 500-foot space, 10 by 10. The separate grids can simplify shifting to smaller scales as needed without disrupting larger scale maps, still in use during an encounter. So if this is your ship, the Hammerhead, and you're fighting the elves, your ship would just be on your pizza box. And when you are within 50 feet of a star moth, you could then take a pizza box with a star moth on it and set it next to your Hammerhead ship. And these two can now engage in melee or ranged combat or close distance to then roll out the Chessex map and depict your characters at the 5-foot scale, pulling these pizza boxes aside. Maybe I should take photos of pizza boxes. Surging. So surging refers to increasing the scale of movement without increasing the scale of the current map. You can move up to 10 squares in a straight line on the current scale map as though moving only one square at the next larger scale of magnitude. You can use 1 square of movement at the 1 mile scale to surge forward up to 10 50-foot squares. You can use 1 square of movement at the 500-foot scale to surge forward up to 10 50-foot squares. You can use 1 square of movement at the 50-foot scale to surge forward up to 10 5-foot squares. Now, when determining if a pilot is at risk of inertia shock, surging counts as shifting only 1 scale of magnitude, even if movement is divided between multiple instances of surging and normal movement during your turn. For example, in the illustration below here, a craft on a 50-foot scale map, so this is a 50-foot scale map, a ship on a 50-foot scale map can use 1 square of movement at the 500-foot scale to surge forward 6 squares to point A. So starting here to point A, that's 1 square because we surged. And then use 2 squares at the 50-foot scale to then move 100 feet to B. So we can turn on a dime, hover speed, right? So 1 square of surge to here, and then 2 squares at the 50-foot scale, and then 1 square to surge 200 feet to C. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 at the 500-foot scale to move to there. So that was 1 square, 2 squares, 3 squares, 4 squares, and 1 square to surge 500 feet to D. And that's 10 squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Since moving at the 50 and 500-foot scale are within 1 magnitude, there's no risk of inertia shock. That is super precise. That is very, very specific language. But that is something that comes up as you are maneuvering. When you have these ships that can move ridiculous speeds and you're weaving your way through obstacles, how can I most efficiently move to be able to get the distance and positioning that I want? Obviously, if I were to surge at the 1 mile scale, that would mean that I would be moving potentially 100 squares, which would smash me into this rock here. If I were to overshoot B to C and surge forward a whole mile, I'll smash into this rock. I can effectively, basically, hit the gas and surge forward to point C here at a slightly at second gear, moving at the 500-foot scale instead of 50-foot scale. without having to overshoot the obstacles, you see? Since we can move multiple squares, we could just spend, like I could do one square and then another surge of one square here and another surge of one squares here and another surge of one squares here. And that would be 1, 2, 3, 4 squares. But I can dip and change between them, between that 550-foot scale as I need to while I'm navigating through these objects. Because that's the most efficient way to do it. Pacing. When a target ship moves, you can use a reaction to move with it, staying at the same distance and position relative to the target during its movement. A pilot that uses the disengage action before movement cannot be paced, and you can choose to stop pacing a target at any time to avoid inertia shock or collision. For example, if ship A attempts to pace ship B, here is ship A and here is ship B, while traveling through the asteroids depicted below, A will collide with the asteroid in its path at position C unless it stops pacing before collision. So as a reaction, I can move up to this much by pacing that ship, but that ship keeps going, so I have to break off my pacing because I now have to use my own movement to now navigate around the rock to be able to continue the pursuit. But I at least got a couple extra squares in by pacing. If I wasn't going to be able to use my reaction otherwise, it's kind of like a backwards disengage, like remaining engaged, but pacing sounded like a better word. Outpacing. So if the target you're pacing attempts to leave combat by increasing scale during movement, risking inertia shock, you must also make a saving throw against inertia shock to continue pacing. If the save is successful, you can continue pacing the ship at the higher magnitude of speed, as detailed in shifting scale and moving targets. So basically, you can remain in your relative fixed position, even though you just change your scale of movement, like say from the 1 mile scale to the 1,000 mile scale. If the save fails, once you recover from the inertia shock next round, you can then attempt to pursue the target using the pursuit section below. And then after all this heavy mechanical business, mixing maps and theater of the mind. So all 3 scales of maps detailed above can be placed next to each other, similar to the illustrations above, either on a gaming table while playing in person or within a virtual tabletop like Roll20. Maps can also mix with theater of the mind. For example, since ranged weapons can attack any target up to 1 mile away, if there's only one target in the encounter, the 500-foot scale isn't necessary. The target either remains within range of combat or it doesn't while the ships make ranged attacks against each other. If either chooses to close distance, you can place them on a 50-foot scale map. Similarly, if a ship has enough movement to close from the 500 to the 5-foot scale to then board the target ship, the 50-foot scale map isn't necessary, and the 2 ships can be placed on a 5-foot scale. Maybe I should put in can be placed immediately. Yeah. Let's grab that. Page 20 top. Can be placed immediately on a 5-foot scale. There we go. Okay. As another example, if a DM determines the crew of a target vessel will surrender if it's boarded, once successfully grappled at the 50-foot scale, the 5-foot scale map isn't necessary unless the boarding team chooses to ignore the declaration of surrender and continue combat aboard the captured ship. So you see, you only need to map what you need to map. And now that you understand the idea of how you can shift scale between each other, you can just depict all that in theater. If you like theater of the mind, you now understand the underlying physics and what that visualization is, so that everyone can do the mental visualizing of theater of the mind, of changing scales of map, and being able to depict these different things happening at the same time at these different scales. Theater of the mind is awesome, but being able to actually mechanically express things on the map, like to be able to specifically track its movement, only helps reinforce theater of the mind, because you can actually visualize it like game pieces. So pursuits. A vessel with a minor spelljamming helm that has a maximum movement scale of 1,000 miles per square during combat while a craft with a minor spelljamming helm has a maximum of 10 miles squares. 10 miles per square. A craft can pace a vessel until the vessel increases speed beyond 10 mile squares. The minor helm simply cannot match this vessel's greater scale of movement. A major helm, however, allows for far greater speeds and can easily pace craft and most creatures. However, if two ships or creatures have a similar maximum scale of movement, one cannot simply increase scale to outpace the other. Instead, you participate in a pursuit. During a pursuit, creatures move independently, that is a change that we need to make for 2024. During a pursuit, creatures moving independently make opposed dexterity or constitution checks, and the pilots of the ship make opposed pilot checks, as detailed in the pilot rules section below. If the pursuer succeeds, place both on a 500-foot scale. So if the pursuer succeeds, place both on a 500-foot scale map 5 squares apart and roll initiative to begin combat. The pursuer rolls with advantage. If the winner of the contest wants to evade the other, then the other cannot attempt to close distance for 1 minute. After 1 minute, the pursuer can make another check with disadvantage against the evading target's passive pilot DC. Or if pursuing a creature against a DC 8 plus its proficiency bonus plus dexterity or constitution modifier, whichever is higher. If the second check fails, the pursuer loses the evading target. See orrery scan section below for details about tracking beyond visual range. If the pursuer succeeds this second check, place both on a 500-foot scale map 5 squares apart and roll initiative to begin combat. The pursuer rolls with advantage. So you see how that works? Since you're similar speed, it's basically an opposed roll to see if the one that's trying to run away can get distance or not. And then there's the pursuer. So in 5e24, this actually changes. So we need to actually change the language here. So, however, if two ships during a pursuit, creatures moving independently make opposed, this is what we actually need to do. So I'm going to grab this block. It's close. The answer's already inside here, but we need to spell it out better. 20. Page 20R. During a pursuit, creatures move independent. During a pursuit, creatures moving independent. Let me see. How do I want to word that? During a pursuit, what's the wording? During a pursuit, each participant that is moving, that moves independent, that's moving independently. No, I want to word that differently. How do I want to do this? Makes a... Oh, I see what I'm doing there. During a pursuit, creatures move independently, make opposed dexterity constitution checks, and the pilots of ships make opposed pilot checks. We don't do opposed checks in 5e24. It's saving throw based. Let's see. During a pursuit, the characters the pilot makes a dexterity the pilot makes a make a dexterity or a constitution check during how do I remember this? During a pursuit, pilots a pilot make a pilot check against the target's during a pursuit, whether the characters are closing or evading their target, make a pilot check against the target's pilot DC. If the target is a creature moving independently, the DC is 8 plus this is the way. Whichever is higher. Good. So during a pursuit, whether the characters are closing or evading, are either closing with or evading, are closing with or evading their target, make a pilot check against the target's DC, the target's pilot DC. If the target is a creature moving independently, the DC is 8 plus its proficiency bonus plus dexterity or constitution modifier, whichever is higher. If the characters succeed let's see, during a pursuit, whether the characters are closing with or evading their target, make a pilot check against the target's pilot DC. If the target is a creature moving independently, the DC is 8 plus its proficiency bonus plus dexterity or constitution modifier, whichever is higher. If the characters let's see, if the pursuer succeeds. I see why I didn't impose roll, because it was easy to measure success versus failure. And it was kind of bilateral. We're now making it one direction from the perspective of the characters, which could either be pursued or you could be closing or evading, right? So the result means something different. Let's see. Yeah, during a pursuit, whether the characters are closing with or evading their target, or either closing with their target or evading their target, make a pilot check against the target's pilot DC. If the target is a creature moving independently, the DC is 8 plus its make a pilot check. I have to bold that because we haven't explained what a pilot check is yet until we get to the pilot rules in a couple pages. But we needed to express it here because this is where you express it. So during a pursuit, while the characters are closing with or evading their target, make a pilot check, which needs to be hyperlinked, against the larger of the target's pilot DC. If the target is a creature moving into... Ooh, maybe this is the way to do it. Hold on. I think I may have... Interesting. Hold on. Thanks for the word count, buddy. Okay, so during a pursuit, creatures moving independently make opposed dexterity and constitution checks, and the pilots... during a pursuit, creatures moving independently make a dexterity or constitution check. And pilots... Yeah, and the pilot, that was actually accurate. And the pilots of ships make pilot checks, as detailed in the pilot rules section below. Individual creatures moving independently make a dexterity or constitution check, and the pilots and ship pilots make pilot checks as detailed in the pilot check below. The the pursuer if the pursuer result is higher, place both place both participants on a 50-foot scale map, 5 squares apart, and roll initiative to begin combat. The pursuer rolls advantage, right? If the evading participant rolls higher, the pursuer can make another after 1 to close the distance using the target's ability or pilot check result as the DC. There we go. That's the stuff. That's how 5e24 works. During a pursuit, creatures moving independently make a dexterity or constitution check, and ship pilots make pilot checks, as detailed in the pilot roll section below. Let's look at this again real quick. Hold on. However, if two ships or creatures have a similar maximum scale of movement, one cannot simply increase scale to outpace the other. Instead, you participate in a pursuit. During a pursuit, creatures moving independently make a dexterity or constitution check, and ship pilots make a pilot check. And ship pilots, creatures moving independently make a dexterity or a constitution check, and ship pilots make a pilot check, as detailed in the pilot roll section below. If the pursuing results, if the pursuer's result is higher, if the pursuer's result is higher, place both participants on a 500-foot scale map 5 squares apart and roll initiative to begin combat. The pursuer rolls with advantage. If the evading participant rolls higher, the pursuer can make another check after 1 minute. If the evading participant rolls higher, the distance between the distance if the evading participant rolls higher, the pursuer cannot close distance. And can make another check. If the evading participant rolls higher, the pursuer cannot close distance. There we go. Period. After 1 minute, the pursuer can make a new check using the target's ability or pilot check result prior ability or pilot check result I'm wondering if this is too large. Hold on. I'm checking the width of my columns here. I'm not liking it. Grab this again. Let's see how wide this is. This is our maximum width. Right here is our maximum width. And we are way over budget. Let's double double check that real quick. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the ragged edge of where we can actually be at. Yep, that's, yeah, okay, so this is our maximum width, which is this S. So I cannot extend beyond this S. No, I guess apparently I can. Range +2. There we go. That's our actual maximum width. There we go. Very good. Damn, it's actually participants. There you go. As detailed in the pilot rule section below. Make. During a pursuit, creatures moving independently make a and ship pilots make a pilot check as detailed in the pilot rules section below. We'll let it stick. Let's see if we can. Let's go to there and see if it works. The pursuer results is higher than persists. Defend. That works. That works. Newer. You need to click here. If the pursuer result is higher, place both. Okay. During pursuit, creatures moving independently make creatures. Let's do this. During pursuit, comma. Detailed in the while creatures moving independently make a dexterity or constitution check, period. That worked out. If the pursuer's result is higher, place both participants on. If the pursuer's result is higher, they close distance and to the 500-foot scale, placing both participants on a 500-foot scale. Map 5 squares apart and roll initiative. The pursuer rolls with advantage. If the evading participant, okay, I think this is going to work out. If the evading participant rolls higher, the pursuer cannot close distance. If the evading participant rolls higher, the pursuer cannot immediately close distance. Cannot immediately close distance. After 1 minute of continuing pursuit, so we can make a new check using the target's prior ability or pilot check result as the DC. If the second check fails, the Pursuer loses the evading target. For details, about tracking beyond visual range. If the pursuer succeeds the second check, place both on advantage. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 lines. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. There's only 17 lines. Wow. Well, we condensed the statement and we somehow were able to say more. So if I find I need to pad it, I've got plenty of padding. That's excellent. I'm really happy with that. Cool. Okay, that was worthwhile. Carry on. Additional ship maneuvers. In addition to the general rules of movement and scale detailed above, pilots can perform various special maneuvers. Aligning gravity. I like that this pursuit isn't a specific maneuver at any kind of scale. It's just getting you back into scale. And how here it's talking about theater of the mind. So when this says above, it's being literal about being above. Like this is where the other maneuvers are listed. I love that. I just personally love that. In addition to the general blah, blah, blah. Aligning gravity planes. If the ship you're piloting is occupying space within the gravity plane of a target that you can touch, within a target that you touch as an action, if the ship you're piloting is occupying space within the gravity plane of a target that you touch as an action or hit with a melee attack, you can choose to align your gravity plane with that target. If you fully occupy space within the target's gravity plane, you're considered pacing the target without using a reaction or any additional movement to do so. You or the target can use the disengage action to break alignment. If you are adjacent to or only partially occupying the target's gravity plane, alignment automatically breaks when the target moves at least one square away without needing to disengage first, though doing so can result in an opportunity attack as detailed below. The illustration below depicts a spiderling craft A, a night spider vessel B, both aligned with the gravity plane of a space galleon C. When the galleon moves, the night spider automatically breaks alignment D, while the spiderling automatically paces the movement, shown here E. Since this is inside of the space that the space galleon occupies, the craft is carried along with it because it's inside of the larger gravity plane, but these two break gravity plane there. When the galleon moves, the night spider automatically breaks alignment, which we show here in D because this is where these two are overlapping. And that breaks here, while the spiderling automatically paces the movement here. That still stands. This might change. Grappling. A pilot can grapple as a ship melee attack with any weapon that has the grappling weapon property, making a pilot check against the AC of the target. Let's look at grappling real quick. Just to make sure we have the language right. Look at that. It's right in the middle of the page for me. Let's see. GH. Here we go. H grapple. A creature can grapple another creature. Creatures typically grapple by using an unarmed strike. Many monsters have special attacks that allow them to quickly grapple prey. However, a grapple is initiated. It follows the rules. See unarmed strikes and grappled. Grapple condition, successfully grappled. Okay, that works. Okay, great. So grappled above and unarmed strikes below. Grapple condition. Successfully grappling a creature gives it the grapple condition. 1 grapple per hand. A creature must have a hand free to grapple another creature. Some stat blocks and game effects allow a creature to grapple using a tentacle, a maw, or another body part. Whatever part a grappler uses, it can grapple only 1 creature at a time with that part, and the grappler can't use that part to target another creature unless it ends the grapple. Ending a grapple. A grappled creature can use its action to make a strength, athletics, or dexterity acrobatics check against the grapple escape DC, grappler's escape DC, ending the condition on itself on a success. The condition also ends if the grappler has the incapacitated condition or if the distance between the grappler target and the grappled exceeds the grappler's range. In addition, the grappler can release the target at any time, no action required. Okay, and then we need to look at unarmed strike for how to initiate a grapple. The target must succeed on a strength or dexterity saving throw, or it has the grappled condition. The DC for the saving throw and any escape attempts is 8. It's basically your pilot check DC. So grappling. A pilot can grapple as a ship melee attack with any weapon that has the grappling weapon property, making a piloting check against the AC of the target. So we need to change that. Page 21. That didn't work. Copy. Why are you not obeying my commands? Thank you. A pilot can grapple as a ship melee attack with any weapon that has the grappling weapon property. The target makes a pilot check against your pilot DC. The target pilot can grapple as a ship melee attack with any weapon that has a grappling property. The target makes a pilot check against your pilot DC. Is that the best way to do this? Yeah, I'd say yes, that is, because, yeah, I think that'd be fine, because it's strength or dex is normally what you have for grappling when you're a person, but the ability checks you can make with athletics or swimming is strength and dexterity. Similarly, piloting checks can be strength or dexterity, but they can also be intelligence, wisdom, and constitution. So, intelligence and strength, dexterity, intelligence, and constitution. Those are the 4 ability checks that you can use to make a pilot check. Pilot check is a more general term for those 4 types of ability checks while you pilot, hence pilot check. And the pilot check in the DC would be the pilot check DC. So the armor class wouldn't be appropriate. The grappler, the target, makes a pilot check against your pilot DC. Do I have space? Somehow I have space. It's amazing. If the target is a creature, it makes a dexterity or strength saving throw instead. There. And I have the space for that because when we look at our page here, I've got a 3-line gap. And I only needed 2 lines to include that text. So that's going to fit. Fucking miracle. Effects of grappling. The following conditions apply while ships remain grappled. Ships that are grappling can use a bonus action to scuttle the grappled target. Yes, ships that are grappling can use a bonus action to scuttle the grappled target, as detailed in the scuttling section below. Ships that are grappled cannot roll with advantage on saving throws to avoid being scuttled, even if they're larger craft. While grappling, ram and additional grapple attacks are rolled with disadvantage against the grappled target. A grappling weapon cannot be used against another target until the current grapple ends, though some grappling weapons can continue to deal damage to a grappled target, as detailed in the ship melee weapon section below. Ships that are grappled are considered to be towed by the grappling ship, if its towing capacity allows, and cannot move independently until the grapple ends. Ships that are grappled are adjacent to the grappler at the 5-foot scale, and creatures can use the grappling weapon as difficult terrain to move between the grappling ships and the grappled target. Cool, that works. Undersized grappling attacks. A craft or creature 50 feet or smaller in size that grapples a vessel or similarly large target is too small to gain all the effects of grappling as listed above, because the target is too large to be controlled. Instead, you have a hold on it. The following conditions apply while you have a hold. And this can apply to your 5-foot characters when they grab hold of a giant creature. The following conditions apply while you have a hold. While you have a hold on a target, you automatically align with the target's gravity plane. While you have a hold on a target, it cannot use the disengage action to break alignment with your gravity plane. While you have a hold on a target, you have half cover against ranged siege weapon attacks. And while you have a hold on a target, you cannot use the holding weapon or appendage of a creature, such as a hand or a tentacle, and you cannot move from the space you occupy relative to the target, because you're holding on. You can move while you're holding, but that's a separate action, right? Crawling around. Breaking a grapple or hold. A pilot can attempt to break their ship free from a grapple or a hold by using an attack or bonus action for each creature or weapon currently grappling it by rolling a strength or dexterity saving throw against the grappling ship's pilot save DC. A ship that has grappled a target can choose to end the grapple during their turn without using an action. I want to change that. Page 21, left. A ship that has grappled a target can choose to end the grapple at any time. No action required. That is 5e24 language. And we're better for it. That should say R. And this should say 21 left. And this should say 21 left, because Phil doesn't know his left from his right. How you guys doing? Opportunity attacks. When a target attempts to move beyond the reach of a ship melee weapon at any scale of movement, the pilot can use a reaction to make an opportunity attack with that weapon or any other. So when a target attempts to move beyond the reach of a ship melee weapon at any scale of movement, the pilot can use a reaction to make an opportunity attack with that weapon or any other that is also within reach, unless the target first takes the disengage action as detailed in the ship rules section below. When you hit with an opportunity attack, you can choose to align gravity planes as detailed above, And if the attack is with a grappling weapon large enough, you can end the target's movement before it leaves your reach. If instead you can only hold the target with the attacking grappling weapon, and you are fully occupying space within the target's gravity plane, you can paste the target if you choose to align gravity planes. See the ship melee weapons section below for more details about the ship melee weapon reach. Ramming. A pilot can make a ram attack after moving the ship in a straight line towards the target and using a bonus action to move a ship melee attack to make a ship melee attack against the AC of the target. A vessel must move at least 500 feet towards the target, and the pilot can choose to stop at the 50 or 5 foot scale adjacent to the target. A craft must move at least 50 feet towards the target, and the craft stops in the 5 foot square adjacent to the target. If there isn't enough distance between you and the target to make a ram attack, as detailed above, you can instead choose to surge forward the target, as detailed in the surging section above, before using a bonus action to make the attack. But doing so risks inertia shock, DC 20. If the attack hits, determine the results as detailed in the ship melee weapons section below, depending on how you hit. Scuttling. As a melee attack hits, after a melee attack hits a target ship or similar structure with a gravity plane, as a bonus action, you can attempt to suddenly shift its gravity to align with yours, referred to as scuttling. The target makes a strength or dexterity saving throw against a DC of 15 or the pilot check DC, whichever is higher. If the target ship has more hit points than yours, roll with advantage. If it has fewer hit points, roll with disadvantage. If the save succeeds, the target ship can choose to align its gravity plane with the attacker without any further effect. If the save fails, any creature or object that aren't secured take blood. You can take a reaction to secure yourself so you don't take falling damage, but obviously you have to have a reaction available. If the save fails, any creature or object that aren't secured take bludgeoning damage equal to a number of d6s equal to the number of 50-foot spaces the target occupies, minimum of 1d6. For example, if a hammerhead ship scuttles a wasp ship that occupies a 3x3 space, the crew and objects aboard the wasp take 3d6 bludgeoning damage from the collision. If instead the target is a skiff with a smaller than 50 feet, the damage is d6. Creatures can use a reaction to brace for impact, taking no damage. Siege weapons and crew under the command, you hear that all the time, brace for impact. You don't take any damage that way. Siege weapons and crew under the command of a creature that brace for impact also take no damage, as detailed in the siege command roll section above. Below. This is page 22 left. Well, that's a callback. Jeez. Originally the ship rolls was first, and then we went all the details about how things could happen. I'm surprised that didn't make it through. That's not on my editor. I changed the order of the text to make the book layout work. That's my fault for not fixing that. A pilot is assumed to be... Okay, so as detailed in the siege command roll... Oops. In the siege command section below, and I jumped to that section. Derp. Let's scroll back out. Scuttling. Here we go. A pilot is assumed to be in command of weapons and crew aboard the ship unless another creature takes command during the turn. As detailed in the siege command roll below, a pilot is assumed to be in command of weapons and crew aboard the ship unless another creature takes command. Because, again, it said right here, creatures, siege weapons and crew under the command of a creature that braces for impact also takes no impact. So if the commander of that crew braces for impact, then all of the siege weapon itself and the crew benefit from that brace for impact. Once two objects have aligned gravity planes, neither can scuttle the other unless they break alignment, as detailed in the aligning gravity plane section above. Squeezing. Squeezing into smaller spaces. A ship can squeeze into a space that is large enough to accommodate its length and width listed in the regenerated ship section above. Like the actual width. Like instead of being 50 feet, like occupying a 50-foot square or whatever, like if your ship is only 20 feet wide, it can squeeze through a space that's 20 feet wide, regardless of what space it actually occupies. While squeezing in a space, with each square of movement costs 1 extra square, so it's basically difficult terrain. A ship can move either forward or backward while squeezing and can turn up to 90-degree turn each move action if it can squeeze in the new direction. Pilots have disadvantage on ship melee attack rolls and dexterity saving throws while squeezing. Attack rolls against the ship have advantage while it is squeezing. So looking down here, looking at a galleon ship. Here's some narrow spaces with a nice little pocket in between them. So, for example, a space galleon is 130 feet long and 30 feet wide. In the illustration below, a ship can squeeze through the 50-foot wide gap between two asteroids, spinning 2 squares to surge forward 5 squares forward 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 squares. The word feet shouldn't be there. Let's copy that. Page 22R. The ship can then turn 90 degrees and spin 2 more squares of movement to surge forward while squeezing between 2 asteroids again, moving 10 squares. B. Moves forward, rotates 90 degrees, moves forward 10 squares. Right, because we're using surging, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to navigate that space in one. It would take 2 turns to be able to maneuver through there with this squeezy space. At the 50-foot scale, it would be 1 square, 2 squares, 3 squares, 4 squares, 5 squares, 6 squares, 7 squares, 8 squares, 9 squares, and that would basically be the end of my turn. I could then turn 90 degrees. And then on the next turn, 1 square, 2 square, 3 square, 4 square, 5 square, 6 square, 7 square, 8 square, 9 square, 10 square. This would take 2 rounds to get here, but by surging, we can use 1 square of movement to move up to 10 squares in one single direction. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's a surge, and then 90-degree turn, and then the next turn. 10 squares, that's 2 squares of movement because it's squeezed, so that's surge 2, rotate 90 degrees for free, and then surge 10. Forward is another square, 2 squares total because of squeezing, 4 squares total, 1 movement instead of 2 rounds. Good. Super specific rule, but having all those intricate details, understanding them lets you melt them away. You don't have, since the rules are there, you don't need to use them, but you know if they need to be used, these things exist so that they can make the experience of making rulings easier. You understand how the physics work, you understand how surging works, you understand how pacing works. You understand how being able to change your orientation is free unless your movement is restricted, in which case you can only move up to 90-degree turns. All that kind of just melts, like how to scale, like how to land and how to take off from things, how to close distance, how to open up distance between each other, how to pursue things. All these things all just kind of melt together into just ship physics, into ship combat. And it all, you can get technical with it at the 5 foot square if you want to, or if you're just doing theater of the mind because that's what you're doing, the physics still are there. So the mechanics are there for you to be able to use, for you as a DM, to make the proper rulings on how can they navigate these spaces, or how can they catch up with this ship. You have those mechanics here so that if you don't want to use them specifically, they give you enough of a point of leverage so that you can make your own rulings. So it's like, I want to change it to work differently, but now you know these are all the different pieces of action, economy, and circumstances that are going to arise engaging in objects and other ships and targets in relative distance to each other, and maneuverability and catching up and scaling distance and blah, 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 blah. All that shit, all that physics stuff is now here in that first 8 pages. So now they have all that shit locked down. Ship roles. This is a fun section. As described in the Spelljammer's Adventures in Space, the only role necessary to operate a spelljamming ship is that of the pilot. In Spelljammer's Combat and Exploration, piloting is just one of many roles that offer a selection of optional actions that you can take aboard a ship, in combination with other actions that can normally take at the 5 foot scale of adventuring during combat. So, role. Pilot, your duties is moving the ship and attacking with ship melee weapons. The role of siege commander, your duties are commanding siege crews to attack with ranged ship weapons. Squadron commander duty are commanding ally ships to move and attack. And then the support role duties are assisting pilots and commanders. If you want to be a pilot, you have to be focusing on a helm. If you want to be a commander or support, you either also have to be focusing on a helm or an orrery. That should actually read orrery station. Page 23, top. Pilot options, verbal commands. You can take command as a verbal command. You can take command of a siege crew. And you can take command of a squadron as a verbal command. But those are the only 2 verbal commands that matter here. Object interaction. You can move the ship as an object interaction. You can move a squadron as a object interaction. That's it. The action. You can attack, you can defend, you can disengage, you can hide, you could move ship. Maybe in parentheses I should put dash. And you can take the ready action. As a siege commander, you can take the attack action or use the ready action. As a squadron commander, move squadron, move ship. I think that's appropriate then. In context to moving squadron versus moving ship, I think that's fair. Siege commander can attack or ready action. A squadron commander can attack, move the squadron, disengage the squadron, or ready an attack. Do we have? We should at least be consistent. Ready attack. Squadron commander should be ready action. Yeah, that'd be appropriate. And then help focus, scan, and target are the actions that you can take as support. Bonus actions is also target and help focus. Squadron commander can use a bonus action to attack, to disengage, to ram, or scuttle. A siege commander option can use a bonus action to attack. Bonus action for pilot can be to attack, defend, disengage, ram, or scuttle. And then the attack action specifically for a pilot is a ship melee attack. The attack action specifically for a siege commander is either a ranged ship attack or a reload, the reload action. A squadron commander can either do a squadron attack or reload. And the support option does not have an attack option. Because otherwise, because I have to take command of a siege crew or a squadron to be able to issue a reload command. And a support role does not command anything. It assists those that are commanding. You can have the same role. You could be a support and a commander at the same time, depending on how you divide up your action economy. But the support role technically does not use reload. And then as reactions, you can award pilot, help reload. And see, here's the help reload as a reaction. You can do that. The squadron commander can pace with the squadron, opportunity attack with the squadron, or issue a reload for the whole squadron's weapons arrays. Siege commander can issue a reload to the siege crew. And reactions for the pilot is to deflect, pace, and opportunity attack. And each of those things are described down here. Pilot actions. Attack, defend, deflect, disengage. There we go. All that shit. Pilot role. SC&E removes the requirement of being a spellcaster to pilot a ship. Any creature within 5 feet of a spelljamming helm that focuses on it can assume the pilot role. Many actions a pilot can take requires a pilot check. A pilot check is 1d20 plus your pilot ability modifier plus your proficiency bonus. A passive pilot check is 10 plus your pilot ability modifier plus your proficiency bonus. A pilot save DC is 8 plus your pilot ability modifier plus your proficiency bonus. Your pilot ability score can be Constitution, Dexterity, Intelligence, or Wisdom. Right, thank you. Pilots making saving throws. When the ship is targeted by an effect, the pilot uses their own ability modifiers unless the ship material otherwise affects the results. If so, use that instead. Like, for example, heavy material like metal and stone doesn't gain any dexterity modifiers. So if you try to make a dexterity check in a metal ship, you aren't allowed to add any of your dexterity modifiers. You effectively have a dexterity of 10. But you automatically have a strength and a constitution modifier of +5, even if you only have a 10 strength yourself. So there's pros and cons to each material. If both you and the ship can be targeted by an effect that requires a saving throw, roll once using the ship material modifier when appropriate. If the save is successful, both you and the ship are considered to have succeeded. Otherwise, likewise, if the save fails, both fail. See spellcasting below for more relevance. Taking damage for the ship. When a ship takes damage, you can choose to use the pilot's hit points to shield the ship from taking some or all of the damage dealt to it. While focusing and not surprised, choose how much damage to take for the ship. Damage taken this way can be reduced by any resistances and other effects such as the Warding Bond spell and can be healed as normal. Taking damage for the ship forces you to make a Constitution saving throw to maintain focus as detailed in the focus sidebar above, using the ship material modifier if you prefer. You cannot reduce your hit points below 0 this way. Subtract any remaining damage, and focus works the exact same as Constitution. Cut the damage in half, and that's your DC up to a maximum of 30. Subtract any remaining damage from the ship's damage reduction score to determine how much damage is taken by the ship. The ship is destroyed at 0 hit points. For example, a creature with 65 hit points is piloting a space galleon with 260 hit points and 10 damage reduction. If a trebuchet hits the ship for 70 bludgeoning damage, the pilot can choose to take 20 damage, reducing its hit points to 45. The remaining 50 damage is reduced by 10, dealing 40, because it's got damage reduction of 10. So the remaining 50 points of damage is reduced by 10, dealing 40 damage to the ship, reducing its hit points to 220. And the focus DC for that 20 damage would be a DC of 10. which we don't specifically mention here, but it's totally true. Damage within an area of effect. If a ship, so in 5e24, there's so many classes that provide temporary hit points that a lot of times when you're taking damage for the ship, you're just basically allowing the ship to eat that temporary hit point battery that you have. And because healing is so cheap and easy, if you have a healer, or if you yourself are a healer and you want to spend the action economy, the pilot can be healed each round after they take damage. So you're helping tank damage for the ship. The damage reduction is also helping reduce damage to the ship. But the trebuchets and the ballistas and the mangonels and all the siege weapons that are attacking the ship, since you're attacking more quickly, potentially multiple times per round, with multiple attacks as a pilot or with an efficient siege crew, you can be making multiple attacks per round that are dealing tens of damage on a ship that has maybe like the maximum, like a hammerhead ship has 500 hit points. It can take 8 hits from a trebuchet dealing 70 or 80 points of damage a pop. That's not a lot. So having pilots and having multiple pilots that can take damage for the ship is a way for your team, your characters, to be taking hit points of damage during combat at this 50 and 500 foot scale as a collective group as the ship. So that's the narrative that goes on there. It's super dangerous at low levels, and the ship taking damage for you is how the ship is protecting the characters. But like a 15th level barbarian with like 210 hit points, it's protecting the ship from being damaged by using its rage, like the BPS resistance, and it's just its massive hit point pile or like a fighter that's using second winds to take damage and then recover that damage from the ship. There's a lot of really cool abilities in 5e24 that let pilots tank a lot more damage for the ship than before. So I think the new 5e24 mechanics are even more generous to ship combat than what the 5e14 system was, simply because of ship, you're able just to take more abuse and recover from abuse much more quickly in 5e24. It really is great for this game system now. So damage within an area, that's why I like 5e24 so much, because it makes ship combat a little less risky, which makes mecha combat that much easier, because mecha combat uses these same mechanics, except instead of being in ship or bug-shaped ships, you're in human-shaped ships with arms that can hold weapons. So you can make Gundams now. We have this provides us with the means of making Gundam, which we're going to make as a separate supplement once this is updated for 24. Damage within an area of effect. If a ship is within an area of effect that deals damage, a pilot without total cover from the effect is affected as normal. If you take damage and choose to take damage for the ship from the same effect, the Constitution saving throw to maintain concentration and focus is determined by the sum of damage taken. For example, a skiff is a craft with a damage resistance of 5 that doesn't provide total cover for the pilot. If the ship is within the area of a fireball that deals 28 damage, you must make a dexterity saving throw as normal. If the save fails, you take 28 damage and can choose to take up to 23 damage for the ship. The sum of damage is 51, and the Constitution saving throw to maintain focus is 25. If you take no damage for the ship, the DC is 14. You see the difference there? 28 damage. If you take 28 damage up to, and choose to take up to 23 damage, I don't know why I chose that. That's an odd number. It was 51. I think I was just using it as a case in point, because you can choose to take as much damage as you want. Let's make an extra saving throw. If the ship fails, if the save fails, you take 28 damage and can choose to take. Huh, that's really weird. Yeah, up to 28 damage for the ship. Oh, because of the damage resistance. Duh, has a damage resistance of 5. That's where it came from. Thank you. And here's a picture of your team getting hit by a fireball. So, cheers. Pilot actions. A pilot focusing on a spelljamming helm can take the following actions. Attack, or bonus action. You can take the attack action with any ship melee weapons within reach of a target by making a pilot check against the AC of the target. If you have multiple attacks, you can make that many ship melee attacks instead, as detailed in the ship melees section below. Defense. So basically, you have natural weapons on your ship, and you can attack with them with each attack action or as a bonus action. Defend, which is either an action or a bonus action. You gain the following benefits until the beginning of your next turn. Increase the ship's armor class by an amount equal to your proficiency bonus. Roll with advantage when you take the deflect reaction and make a dexterity or constitution saving throw for the ship. And taking damage for the ship doesn't disrupt focus. Defending is super fucking useful because you don't have to worry about losing your focus. So if you're short on bonus actions to take and you don't want to use an attack action, defending ramps your armor class, keeps you safe from losing focus, and of course the dexterity and constitution are an advantage. The deflect reaction, when the ship is hit by an attack, you can make a pilot check with a DC equal to the attack roll. Succeeding the check turns the hit into a miss. Super useful. And you get to roll with advantage when you use the deflect reaction. So preparing yourself to defend, if you need to deflect, you do it with advantage. So defending has real advantage. Pardon the pun. Is really useful if you decide to use it. Disengage. Actions are bonus actions. When moving the ship, you can move out of the reach of the creatures and ship melee weapons without provoking opportunity attacks, including any shift in scale as part of the movement. Hide action. You can make a dexterity or intelligence stealth ability check to conceal the location of the ship. The result of the ability check is the minimum target DC of any detection checks or to scan or track the ship, as detailed in the Ori scans section below. You can hide the presence of a vessel while within 500 feet of a larger target. You can hide the presence of a craft while within 50 feet of larger objects. So again, fighter craft are up to 50 feet in size, so you can hide behind an object up to 50 feet in size. A vessel can be up to 500 feet in size, so it can hide behind an object up to 500 feet in size. Move ship, which is either an object interaction or an action. You can move the ship up to 5 squares. The pilot can also shift scale by 1 magnitude as part of this movement at no additional cost. Creatures have 1 free interaction per turn. Using both an object interaction and action together can move the ship up to 10 squares. Opportunity attack, which is a reaction. You can make a ship melee attack against any target that attempts to move out of your ship melee weapon reach during movement, unless it first takes disengage action before moving, as detailed in the opportunity attack section above. Pace. If a target attempts to shift its distance from the ship, you can instead move to stay in position, preventing the target from doing so as detailed in the pacing. I think I can word that better. I think I can do better. What is this, page 25? Yeah. Page 25L. Pace reaction. If a target attempts to shift its distance, if a target attempts to move away from the shift from the ship, you can instead move to stay in position, preventing the target from doing so. If a target attempts to move away from your ship, you can maintain your current distance and position relative to the target, as detailed in the pacing section above. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Success. Very good. Ram, move ship plus bonus action. You can move the ship in a straight line towards the target and use a bonus action to ram it by making a pilot check against the AC of the target, as detailed in the ram section below. Ready action. Action plus ready reaction. Similar to a creature readying an action during combat at the 5-foot scale, you can ready a pilot action for a specified condition or event which you can then use your reaction to complete. Actions that you can ready include ship melee attack, defend, hide, and move actions. Scuttle. After hitting with a ship melee attack, you can attempt to scuttle the target as detailed in the scuttling section above. And now the siege command roll. Many ships are equipped with ranged siege ship weapons such as ballista, harpoon flingers, and mangonels to attack creatures and other ships. The creatures that operate these siege weapons are called siege crews. The more details about siege weapons and crews are provided in the weapons and crews section below. Commanding weapons and crews. By default, a pilot is in command of a siege siege crews aboard the ship, but any creature can use a verbal command during your turn to take command of one or more ranged ship weapons and their crew that you can see and communicate with. You remain in command of a siege crew until you can't see or communicate with it, or another creature takes command. You can use siege commander actions with these weapons and crew you command as detailed below. Command checks. Many actions a siege or squadron commander can take require a command check. When making a command check, roll 1d20 plus command die plus your rank. Your command die and your rank is determined by your character level or the CR of the NPC commander as listed on the table below. Level 1 to 4 or up to CR 1 is rank 1. You roll a d4. Level 5 to 8 with a CR up to 2 to 5. Your second rank rolling a d6. If you're familiar with the Bastion campaign book that we've been developing here on stream, this table will look really familiar to you. Levels 9 to 12 or a CR of 6 to 9. That is third rank. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes, which rolls a d8. 13th to 16th level or CR of 10 to 13. That's going to be fourth rank, which is a D10, and 17 to 20th level is 14 plus CR. That's rank 5, which is a D12. So, for example, a 7th level character making a command check rolls D20 plus 6 plus 3 to determine the result. When a command check is rolled with advantage or disadvantage, the D20 is rolled twice, but the command die is not. Optional feat, Heroic Commander. Choose one ability score as your command modifier. This ability modifier can replace your rank when making a command check. For example, a 7th level character with a +4 command modifier rolls d20 plus 1d6 plus 4 to determine the result of a command check. As opposed to 7th level being third rank. Let's see. Plus your rank. Oh my god, that should be +2. Another typo. I'm so glad we're doing this. I can't believe these typos exist. Let's see, taking damage for weapons and crew. When a siege weapon or crew under your command are damaged by an attack, spell, or other source, you can use your own hit points to shield them from taking damage, similar to how a pilot can take damage for the ship, as detailed in the pilot roll section above. For example, if a crewmate is hit by an arrow dealing 5 piercing damage, you can choose to take that damage instead. Similarly, if a catapult hits a siege weapon dealing 40 bludgeoning damage, the target can choose to take any amount of that damage for the weapon, and the catapult takes the difference. Siege command actions. A siege commander can take the following actions: attack, reload, ready action, take command. That's it. Attack as an action or a bonus as an attack action or a bonus action. You can issue a command for a siege crew to aim, fire, and reload the next attack by making a command check against the AC of the target. If you can make multiple attacks per attack action, you can make that many attacks instead. If the siege crew successfully reloads the weapon as detailed in the ranged siege weapon section below. Let's see. If you can make multiple attacks per attack action, you can make that many attacks instead if the siege crew successfully reloads the weapons as detailed. Got it. So reload, action or reaction. If a siege crew fails to reload a weapon during an attack, you can use an additional attack action, if any are available, or a reaction to reload the weapon to attack again. Ready action. Similar to a creature, if I have space, and you're available, or reaction to reload the weapon to attack again. You can make that many attacks instead if the crew successfully reloads the weapon. Yeah, I need to shift that. This is page 26. Yeah, I can do that better. So page 26. I am not embarrassed by me finding mistakes like this. I'm just happy to find them so I can correct them. And when people point out typos to me and stuff, I am never angry that they do. I always appreciate it. It may take a little while for me to fix it, but I love finding them and I love correcting them. The weapon, period. Oops. Reload weapon, period. Cut that there. Reload. If a siege crew fails to reload a weapon during an attack, you can use an additional attack action, if any are available, or a reaction to reload a weapon to attack again. As detailed in the ranged siege weapon section below. That totally jives. Nice. Okay, cool. Ready action. Action plus readied action. Plus readied reaction. Similar to a creature readying an attack during combat at the 5-foot scale, you can ready an attack with a loaded siege weapon until a specified condition or event occurs, which you can then use your reaction to issue the command to attack. Take command. On your turn, you can take command of one or more weapons and crew that are friendly to you that you can communicate with during your turn. The weapons and crew can remain under your command until you lose communication with them, are incapacitated, or another creature friendly to the crew subsequently takes command. You must be in command of a weapon and crew to take damage for them or to issue commands during your turn, or as a reaction, such as an opportunity attack. Squadron commander role. Ships can be grouped together to create squadrons and fleets that can be commanded to move similar to ships and attack similar to siege crews. Commanding squadrons requires focusing on a spelljamming helm or a wild space orrery. Actually, I think I'm gonna change that to orrery station. Nope, orrery. That's correct. Nope, orrery station. Sorry, I had to muddle through that, but orrery station is correct. This is page 26, right? orrery station specifically. Just like up here, it has to be an orrery station. It should be italicized. Italicize the lies. Boop. There we go. We're almost done for the night. More details are provided in the squadrons and fleets section below. Commanding squadrons and fleets. You can use a verbal action to take command of one or more ships that you can see or detect through an orrery station. That you can communicate with, and you can use your action to command them as detailed in the section Squadron Commander Actions below. Communicating with squadrons. For a squadron commander to issue commands, you must see the squadron or detect it through a spelljamming helm or an orrery station, and you must be able to communicate with the squadron via one of these methods, either networked orreries, sending stones, networked fargabs, as detailed in the additional section above, connections through familiars, telepathic bonds, or a supporting character who can hear the squadron commander can use Zik light signaling as an interaction if the squadron can see or hear the source of the signal. A squadron that loses communication with you during combat will await orders or act independently as deemed appropriate by the DM. Taking down, you know what? I'm going to change that. Takes the defend action while awaiting orders. A squadron that loses A squadron that loses communication with you during combat takes the defend action or acts independently as deemed appropriate, or acts independently as deemed appropriate by the DM. Period. Good. Taking damage for squadrons. While a squadron is targeted, when a squadron is targeted with an attack or a damaging spell, a squadron commander can use their own hit points to shield the ships and crew from taking any damage, similar to a pilot taking damage for a ship, including the ship the commander is aboard, if it's part of the squadron. More details about damaging ships in a squadron are provided in the Squadrons and Fleets section below. Squadron Commander Actions. A Squadron Commander can take the following actions: attack, disengage, move squadron, opportunity attack, pace, ram, ready, reload, scuttle, take command. Attack. You can issue a command for a squadron to aim, fire, and reload another attack by making a command check against the AC of the target. If you have multiple attacks per attack action, you can make that many attacks instead while the squadron weapon remains loaded, as detailed in the squadron weapons section below. Disengage, which is action or bonus action. While moving the squadron, you can move out of the reach of creatures and ship melee weapons without provoking opportunity attacks, including any shift in scale as part of the movement. Let's see. Let's go back up to the piloting and look at disengage up here. Let's do this. Page 24, right hand side. While moving a ship, you can move out of the reach of creatures and ship melee weapons without provoking opportunity attacks. You can move out of the reach of creatures and ship melee weapons without provoking opportunity attacks. And your movement cannot be paced. Copy. Down here is going to be Squadron Commander. Disengage. This is page 27, right? Grab this. One, two, three, four. 1, 2, 3. Even better. Move squadron. Object interaction or action. You can order the squadron to move up to 5 squares. The squadron can also shift scale by 1 magnitude as part of this movement at no additional cost. Creatures have 1 free interaction per turn. Using both an object interaction and action together, can move the ship, can move the squadron up to 10 squares. You can order a squadron you command to take a squadron melee attack against any targets that attempt to move out of your squadron melee weapon reach during movement unless it first takes the disengage action before moving as detailed in the opportunity attack section above. Pace. If a target attempts to change its distance from your squadron, you can instead order the squadron to stay in position, preventing the target from doing so as detailed in the pacing section above. Did I have a smoother way of saying that on page 23? There we go. 27 left. From the squadron, you can maintain your current distance and position relative to the target as detailed in the pacing section above. Good. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Perfect. Ram. You can move the target, the squadron, in a straight line towards a target and use a bonus action to ram it, but by making a command check against the AC of the target as detailed in the squadron weapons section below. Ready. Action plus reaction. Similar to a creature readying an action during combat at the 5-foot scale, you can ready a squadron commander action for a specified condition or event which you can then use your reaction to complete. Actions that you can ready actions that you can ready are attack actions with loaded weapons within range of the target, or the move action. There we go. Copy. This will be fun. Actions that you can ready either actions that you can ready are the attack action with a loaded weapon Attack action with loaded weapons within reach of the target. Or the move action. Okay, that works. Reload. If a squadron fails to reload weapons during an attack, you can use an additional attack action, if any are available, or reaction for the squadron to reload weapons to attack again. Scuttle. After hitting with a squadron melee attack, you can attempt to scuttle the target as detailed in the squadron weapon section below. Take command. On your turn, you can take command of one or more ships that are friendly to you that you can communicate with during its turn, including the ship you're aboard, replacing the action of the pilot while under your command if you so choose. The squadron can remain under your command until you lose communication with them. When you lose focus on the orrery or are incapacitated, or another creature friendly to the squadron subsequently takes command. You must be in command of a squadron to take damage for it or to issue commands during your turn or as a reaction. Ship support roll. Very close to done. What is it? 8:30? We're right on target. Support action. A supporting character can take the following actions while focusing on a helm or an orrery station. 27R. Help focus. When you take this action, the pilot of the ship you are aboard rolls concentration and focus saving throws with advantage. When you take this action, the pilot of the ship you are aboard rolls concentration and focus saving throws with advantage until the beginning of your next turn. Help reload. Reaction. If a siege crew or squadron that you can communicate with fails to reload weapons during an attack, you can use a reaction to reload the weapons to attack again. You can use a reaction. Is that accurate? Hold on. Yeah, help reload. Good. You can use a reaction to You can use a reaction to you can use a reaction to issue an order to reload to help reload the weapon to attack again. If a siege crew or squadron that you can communicate with fails to reload weapons during an attack, you can use a reaction to issue an order issuing an order use a reaction to issue an order to issue a command that helps reload to issue a command to reload a weapon or you can use reaction to issue a reload command to you can use a reaction to issue a reload command to a weapon or crew, to a weapon use a reaction. Oh man, am I out of space? No, I should be okay. I'm gonna have to squinch though. You can use a reaction to issue a reload command to command a crew to reload. That's the easiest way to do it. There, perfect. Aces. Next, scan. While using an orrery station, I don't know why I have the aversion to using station. I knew there must have been a logic at the time, but you need this. You need to have the orrery mounted into the station to be able to freely do these things. Target. When you take this action, the pilot or commander that you can the pilot or a commander that you can communicate with. When you take this action, the pilot or commander that you can communicate with advantage. Damn it, Kearney. When you take this action, the pilot or a commander that you can communicate with has advantage with the next attack roll or command check against a target you can see or detect through an orrery station. Good. Still on point. Ward pilot. When a pilot or commander aboard the same ship as you chooses to take damage for the ship, crew, or squadron, you can choose to take any amount of the damage instead. You cannot drop below 0 hit points this way. So basically, backup damage sharing. Supporting with class features. In addition to the various support role options to assist other characters' efforts aboard a ship, various class features might also apply. Below is a sample of general class features that modify pilot and command checks in addition to their normal uses. While on the same ship, features that can affect creatures you can see while focusing on a helm or an orrery. I don't like that language. This is what, 28 left? I'm really looking forward to having this updated. Page 28 left. On the same ship, features that can affect creatures you can see. While on the same ship, features that can affect creatures you can see. While on the same ship, you can target. While on the same ship, features that can affect creatures you can see. I can see where that English is coming from. While on the same ship, features that can affect creatures that you can that can affect creatures you can see can also be targeted while you are focusing on a helm or orrery station. Even if you're not physically within sight or range of each other. The target. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Perfect. Yeah, better English. Artificer's Flash of Genius. Barbarian's Rage applies to pilot ability checks and command checks, and you can apply your damage resistance to damage taken from the ship. Bard's Inspiration dice, Expertise, Jack of all trades can apply it to your pilot checks. Monk's Empty Body and Stunning Strikes can be amplified while piloting, as detailed in the spellcasting chapter below. Paladin's Divine Smites can affect ship melee attacks, as detailed in the spellcasting chapter below. Rangers' Favored Enemies grant advantage with detection checks. I don't think we have favored enemies for Rangers anymore, do we? I don't think there's favored enemies at all anymore. Nope, favorite enemy. There it is. Still exists. Rogue's Cunning Action, Elusive Evasion, Expertise, Reliable Talent, and Uncanny Dodge can be used while piloting a ship. Sorcerer's Magical Guidance can spend 1 sorcery point to reroll a pilot or a command check. Is that what it's called? Sorcery Guidance? I know it exists. Hold on. It may have gotten a new name. I know it's a thing. Hold on. I think it's a meta magic dealie, right? I guess not. Careful casting, distant casting, empowered spells, extended spells, and heightened spells, quickened spells, seeking spells, subtle spells, transmuted spells, twin spells. Yeah. This doesn't exist anymore. I get rid of it. For other feats, features, magic items, spells, third-party subclasses, and future content that's published, use the above examples as the guidelines for how to apply them to the roles aboard a ship. Blending ship roles. Characters can share roles during a round of combat, allowing all characters to contribute to the success of an encounter at any scale. Furthermore, characters can freely mix actions as individuals and ship roles each round. For example, you can take the attack action to hit a monster with a sword at the 5-foot scale, then take command of a siege crew as a verbal action and issue a command with an extra attack to fire a ballista at the 50-foot scale while dogfighting another ship at close range before using your movement to approach and sit at the ship's helm. There, taking a bonus action to regain focus to pilot the ship, to then take an interaction to move the ship up to 5 squares in open distance with that other ship to the 500-foot scale. Sharing command of a single ship. Similar to the squadron commander role as detailed above, you can order a pilot aboard the same ship as you to move and make ship melee attacks using actions as a squadron commander, while also ordering any number of siege crew to fire using actions as a siege commander. Similarly, multiple creatures can co-pilot a ship together while focusing on the same spell jamming helm. Each uses actions listed in the pilot's role as detailed above, and each can move the ship during their turn, even if this means more than 10 squares of movement each round. Similar to how a pilot can move more than 10 squares as part of the pacing reaction as detailed in the pacing section above. Co-pilots can each change scale of movement during their individual turns without risking inertia shock, as detailed in the inertia shock sidebar above if multiple creatures are using actions and interactions to move the ship in tandem. The last creature in command of the ship can take a reaction with the ship and remains in command until another creature takes command at a later time. If the current commander loses focus randomly, choose another creature that is co-piloting to immediately take command of the ship. The spirit of group initiative. Spelljammer's Adventures in Space that Wizards published suggests using group initiative during ship combat, so the team acts together each round. This allows ships to freely reorient its position in 3 dimensions so the pilots can bring weapons to bear against any target, while an ally makes an attack, casts a spell, etc., without the ship itself providing cover. This design decision simplifies ship combat significantly, but also grants a substantial benefit to whichever group wins initiative, allowing all creatures and ships in one group to act first, which can decide the fate of a battle before another group has a chance to act at all. If players in the DM decide normal initiative is more fun or fair than group initiative, recognize that the spirit of Spelljammer combat is that the ship and crew are acting in tandem as a team. Mechanical concerns about whether the ship pilot acts before or after siege weapon attacks, etc., and thus enemies acting between the two can use the ship itself as cover, can be set aside by remembering group initiative resolves that concern, and using normal initiative in ship combat is an option that allows each character to act individually, but doesn't require added layers of complexity like arcs of fire or holding actions until the pilot can roll the ship into position. There you go. And now we move on to the next section, which is weapons and crew. Page 29. And this goes to, how far does this go down to? Page, ships and squadrons start on page 36. And then that ends on page 44. So 29 to 44, that's what? 15? That's 15 pages? Yeah. And we just went through, this is page 28. We started on page 13 to 28 is 15 pages. And the next set is 15 pages. Okay, great. So that probably means that when we come back on, it's 8:49 now, so it's time for me to stop. That sounds like that would mean that when we come back on Thursday night to continue this, starting down in the ship crew and weapons, we should, if everything goes well, we should be able to get through those 15 pages as well and finish off the combat chapter by Thursday night. And then we'll be able to tackle the next chapter, which will be maintaining, we'll have maintaining crew and ships on page 45. And then we'll get into spell casting on page 48. And that will continue through. That might take a little while. But we go from page 45 to page 57. So that'll be 22 pages. We may or may not be able to get through all of those. Hopefully those will go swiftly. Then we have the exploration chapter. So Monday we'll be digging through this and probably into Thursday next week. Thursday next week for sure we'll get into exploration. And I can see some mechanical changes that we're going to have to make involving like checks and saves and stuff like that. That's a decent chapter. Down to page 67. So I'll probably get that done on a Monday from next week. Ship hazards is going to take time because we now have a burning hazard in 5e24, so we're going to have to change starting fires. So because we now have the burning hazard, so we have fire, which fires which denotes burning. So we'll have to deal with that. The rest of this stuff should still be fair. And once we get through, then we'll have the creatures menagerie. I don't think we're going to see a lot of changes here. And then we don't need to change the random system generator at all. That's just percentile dice and stuff like that for making random stuff. That's fine. And then we'll want to look through Line of Zaraxis to make sure that all the notations here are accurate. And that's a 22-page romp, which I suspect we'll be able to get through pretty efficiently. So it looks like we'll be doing this probably through the end of September, which probably means that we'll be able to have the document updated and published on DMsGuild probably by early mid-October with the new 2024 mechanics in place. And that means that we'll then be clear to start building out the Spelljammer Subclasses book that we've been building here. Tomorrow at lunch, we're going to work on clerics and druids. Tomorrow and on Friday during lunchtime, we'll work on clerics and druids, doing the subclasses. And so Tuesdays and Thursdays we do subclasses. Tuesdays and Fridays we do subclasses at lunch for an hour. Mondays and Thursdays for 2 or 3 hours we work on game design mechanics like this. Between the two of them, we should probably have all those things finalized together by maybe the first week or so of October, which means that we can then use Thursday night to start building the subclasses book, start doing layouts and start contemplating artwork for it. Maybe even start doing Spelljammer artwork on Mondays and Thursday nights for a change, instead of doing book design work for a little while. That might be fun. That might be fun. Or maybe instead of building the Spelljammer, once we get through the subclasses, maybe we'll go back and revisit the mecha kaiju book and flesh all that stuff out. So that's ready to go. Probably have that complete by the end of October. So in November, we'll be ready for both the subclasses and the mecha books. I think that makes sense. So we could potentially start working on those in December or January when we've finished the Eberron book. I think that might make sense. Okay, I see a path forward. So it looks like maybe by March or April, perhaps, we'll be looking at just doing artwork for Spelljammer full time in the mornings and possibly in the evenings, working on the bashing campaign stuff on the side, and then continuing with the Martial Powers playtesting mechanics on Saturdays. So I'll be back tomorrow morning to do more artwork for the Eberron adventure that we've been doing. I won't be here on Wednesday. I'm going to be going downtown for the day, so I won't be around at all on Wednesday. On Thursday, I'll be back in the morning to do artwork. Thursday night, we'll be doing Spelljammer Combat, the rest of the combat section. Friday morning, we'll be back doing artwork. Friday lunch, we'll be doing subclasses. And then we'll see what next week brings us. So anyone that thinks this stuff is cool and is enjoying it, please like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to keep updated for when I am live. I'm happy to do this stuff. I think it's fun walking through these documents, and just to kind of talk about Riff. It helps remind me of what's out there and inspire me towards whatever the next project is. So be welcome to join my Discord community. It's free. If you want to support me on Patreon, God bless you. And I'll maybe see some of you guys tomorrow morning. So see you later. Bye.